Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Special Public Budget Meeting. The date is February 21st, 2024. The time is 5:06 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled the same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds. Councilmember Whites is not here. Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here, will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now go to the public comment portion of our meeting. And please state your name and address for the record.
Yes. My name is Sarah Wilson.
And Sarah, if you could speak into the mic, this way everyone can hear. You got to really get close to it.
My name is Sarah Wilson. I live at 128 West End Avenue. I'm here to express my support of the Ridgewood Police Department and Village Engineering recommendation to install a sidewalk on Clinton Avenue, a village-designated route to school for Ridge Elementary students. I myself have 3 children in the Ridgewood Public Schools, one at the Ridgewood High School, one at GW Middle School, and a 3rd grader at Ridge. All of my children have used Clinton Avenue as their walking route to Ridge School. And in the past, I've grown increasingly concerned by the volume of vehicles that I see accessing Clinton Avenue while elementary-age students walk along the road. Some escorted by adults, some not. Young children between the ages of 5 and 11 sharing the road with and navigating parked and moving vehicles, including commercial vehicles, delivery trucks and vans, service vehicles, landscapers, construction and utility vehicles. I fully support Ridgewood Police Department and Village Engineering's recommendation, which is consistent with recommendations from the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe Routes to School program, a program the Village has participated with on other safety-related projects to ensure safe routes to school for our students. I am hopeful the Village Council will set aside funding to expedite sidewalk installation in the interest of student safety. I do want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who is engaged in this discussion with parents and residents, including Clinton Avenue residents. We appreciate all the efforts to address the safety concerns that we have raised, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I'm going to close public comment, and we can move on to our regular agenda. Oh, excuse me. We have someone online.
Hello?
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. I'm Pia Di Benedetto, 226 West End Ave, and I am also here to support the Clinton Avenue sidewalks to ensure that the children have a safe way of getting to school. We have 3 daughters, 2 currently at Ridge, 1 in the middle school, and it's always been a concern because we take that route, and as Sarah Wilson was saying, there are many different types of cars, not just residential cars coming on that street, specifically during school time. As a working mother, a teacher, it's concerning for me when my daughters walk to school by themselves, and sometimes they can't walk because I don't have a neighbor to walk them there, which is disconcerting considering that all other elementary schools have safe access on sidewalks to get to Ridge. So as I read the report, the sidewalks are safer from the national research, and this is why I am supporting the sidewalks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one else, I am now going to again close public comment, and we can go on to our regular agenda.
Paul,
Keith?
Paul,
Oh, excuse me?
if I may, sorry, it's my, and Pam's going to echo this, because the public is here, I just want to make sure there's a little bit of a process here. So this is a budget meeting where we've been given all the planning from last year, like Glen Sidewalks was like chat, 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 and now it's carried over into this year. And I've read everything from everybody in Clinton. I think you've been very diplomatic on both sides. The council as a full, even though Lorraine and Paul have spearheaded it, and I'm sure they're doing awesome, we have not seen all the information as a 5. So just process-wise, we have 2 types of meetings, well, actually 3 when you count this in. The next meeting, which will be next Wednesday, is a work session where the full 5 of us get the full set of facts, like how much our sidewalk's gonna cost, how's this gonna, and then we can make a decision. So because I love when people come, I really love public comment and we get new people. The first time we as a council will discuss, and you might wanna advocate for it next week as well, will be that meeting. We're unable to budget anything for this because we don't have any numbers and we don't have any information, but because I used to be a member of the public, that sort of seems like we're blowing you off. So the work session will have all the detail to the 5 of us. We'll chat about it, and then I'm going to say Lorraine's probably going to move for it to be voted on pretty quickly. But I just wanted to make sure you understood, and we have heard you, and we've heard everybody else, but this is just not the place where we would talk about Clinton Ave. Okay, thanks.
Good. Thanks for that explanation, Siobhan. Anyone else? All good. And now we'll go to Keith.
Mayor, good evening. Can everyone
evening.
hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, I want to apologize for not being there in person tonight. Unfortunately, this morning I took a COVID test and the results were positive. Fortunately, I feel well, but in the interest of public health, better to do this remotely. With regard to the comments of the last 2 speakers, if I may, Mayor, we have another meeting with concerned parents and the residents of Clinton Avenue, which is scheduled for next Thursday, February 29th at 7 p.m. in the first floor of Village Hall in the Senior Lounge, where this issue will again be discussed. I believe the mayor and Councilmember Reynolds plan to be there, along with representatives from the Ridgewood Police Department and our engineering department. I've asked our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Rooney, who's with you tonight, to do a full review of all open capital that might be available for any additional sidewalk projects that the council may be inclined to pursue. And Mr. Rooney is undertaking that effort, and we will have that information prepared for next Thursday's meeting. With regard to that, moving to the budget side of things, we have with us our coordinator of the Office of Emergency Management, Jeremy Kleiman, who's with us tonight, who is going to present his portion of the proposed 2024 municipal budget.
Good evening, Jeremy. That's right.
I'm going to try to make, well, I'm not going to try. I'm going to make this right. Great.
Mayor, if I may, as Jeremy gets set up, I just want to point out to the council that the summary sheet for emergency management is color-coded. It's color-coded in the same manner that the fire department budget was, because we did merge parts of the EMS budget with fire and with the Office of Emergency Management. Those color codes indicate blue, where there is a new line that was moved from EMS to OEM. Orange are combined lines where there was funding for OEM, and now there's combined funding from EMS. And those 2 colors will reflect some of the adjustments that were made as these budgets were merged in a similar way to the fire. Turn it over to Jeremy.
Thanks, Keith. Okay, a couple quick sort of highlights or notable things that happened in 2023 I think are worth mentioning. One is my longtime deputy coordinator, Brian Paulman, retired, as you know, in October after 12 years. And we replaced him with, by appointing 2 deputy coordinators, Chief Judge from the fire department and Lieutenant Chuck from the police department. And that was by design, just so you know, I feel very strongly that the other public safety departments should, you know, they are stakeholders in emergency management, and they should have a seat at the table. This way, we're not working in silos. You know, everything we do, there's a representative of each of those departments as well at the table with me, which I think is important. So that's one. Two is, at the end of the year, we recertified our village emergency operations plan, which, as you probably know, had been done every 3 years. The state changed the requirement, and going forward, it's going to need to be revised and recertified every 3 years. It's a painful, torturous process. Each department head that has a relevant portion of that document, which is like a 1,200-page document, has to revise it, update it. It all has to be put together, and there are certain conventions to it that we're required to use. We were the only municipality in Bergen County that got it in like 2 or 3 months early before our expiration period. I met with 2 representatives from Bergen County OEM. The way it works is county OEM reviews it, suggests changes so that it's in compliance, et cetera. And then when they approve it, it gets forwarded to state police OEM, and they certify. I met with representatives from Bergen County OEM. They came down here. It's the normal routine where I expected them to turn pages with me. I budgeted an hour and a half. The meeting was 10 minutes. They said, we've never seen a document submitted to us, a draft, that basically didn't need any changes. They changed like one date on one page or whatever. So has nothing to do with me. Everyone that had input into that document and did their piece did a great job. And it's nice to hear from the county representatives that what a pleasure it is to work with people from Ridgewood, because we're just buttoned up. So I just want to pass that along. All right. The last thing and sort of the biggest thing, which Keith alluded to, is the restructuring of emergency services and the fact that OEM inherited major chunks of that department and integrated them over the last year, the Special Operations Division and the TIES, Teens and Emergency Services. And it was a lot of work to get our footing and get that going. But I have to say, it's been seamless. We have a very good team of volunteer officers of special operations that are running that ship day to day. There's an emergency call, the trucks get out, we do the job, clean up, go home, and there have been no issues or problems. So I'm very, very pleased with the way that's been working. Any questions or anything on that so far?
Anybody?
Before we go to the budget?
How many people are working on special ops?
That's a great question. I don't have the exact head count. I would say special ops, we probably have 40 people on the roster, probably 25 of whom are really active. Some come out for special events and things like that, but in terms of getting called out in the middle of the night to close a road or something, probably have about 24 that are pretty active. On the TIES side, with the kids that volunteer with us, that's also a big roster. I'd say we probably have close to 80, but again, not all of them are active, right? So it's the usual 20% of the people are driving the bus and 80% are the cliche. But
And the officer stipend, which is proposed at $23,500, is that that's spread among how many people?
that's spread around, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6.
Thank you.
6, yeah. And that number is, is a reduction over last year, obviously, because the EMS officers, were pulled out of that.
Anybody else? Proceed.
Okay. I don't have the color-coded operating in front of me, so I don't know if you want me to just go to capital, or if you have questions about anything in there. Do you want me to run through?
Would you like a copy of
Jeremy,
it?
Jeremy, I can run through for you. 23 and 26 are merged, and everything from 29 to 40 on the summary sheet are merged, if that's helpful. Any questions from the council?
Thank you. Okay. All right, so it's the stipends, right. I'm just looking. to
Again, I think it's safe to say there's no dramatic increases.
Yeah, it's pretty
in
flat.
These line items. What you're seeing here is money being moved from another budget into this budget, which
Exactly.
is why some of these numbers increased. But it was money that was previously budgeted for somewhere else in 23 and prior.
And here, I've got a question I'll ask Keith, because you've seen both. If you combine the two departments, was there an increase overall?
Very minor.
Very minor. Good.
Okay, capital?
Yep, let's go.
Okay, right, just a few items. One is $90,000 for surveillance camera trailer. I hate that the word surveillance is in there because it sounds a little creepy, but this is a piece of equipment. We've borrowed them many times in the past from the county. You probably know what they are, right? They look like the light tower trailers that are on Vets Field, but they have cameras that feed into an interface so we can monitor for security purposes, and we've used them for many, many special events, parade, fireworks, Memorial Day run, other events that we've had uptown where the fixed cameras we have don't cover. And so we've borrowed them in the past. We've also had situations where they've been in use by other municipalities and they weren't available to us. So the thought was to acquire our own. It would be used primarily by the police department at their direction. But importantly, it would be the same type of equipment that the prosecutor's office has that we borrow, so that if we borrowed units from them and they were on the same network and system as ours, we could, they'd be integrated into one platform. So that's what that item is. Next is $30,000 to replace replace the garage doors at Douglas Place. There are 7 bay doors. They are over 30 years old. Haven't had routine maintenance. One of them broke several weeks ago. Signal was able to come out and jury rig it and get it working again, but it doesn't have any of the safety eye sensors on the bottom, and the equipment's starting to go. So there's just routine maintenance. Those doors need to be replaced. And then the last item is attack and security camera upgrades at Douglas Place. It does not have a system that is integrated into the village network, so we want to put in proper video cameras and lock systems and have them on the same system as Village Hall and some of the other facilities, so the police department can monitor the cameras, and the proxy card access will be identical to this building and so on. So Lieutenant Chuck is spearheading that project, and we want to get that done this year.
Great. Questions?
And Mayor, if I may, we also, in an effort to mirror what we're doing for the fire department and the police department, we do have $60,000 in the proposed capital budget for the replacement of portable radios for special ops too. That was sort of an add-on as we were trying to put the resources together to make sure that all of our EMS division, all of our emergency responders are outfitted with the new radios.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Yeah, sorry, I missed that one. It was down at the bottom. So
So that was actually my
Yeah.
question about the 60,000, but then the longer-term spend on radios out to 2026, it's $1.4 million. I mean, radios are always a bulk. Like, I'm wondering, do we need more this year? Is that number real for 2026? We have a projection on the radio side, I think it's radio, that in I'm cool with the 60 for this year. I do have questions about how many radios that would be, but it seems a rather large jump in 2 years. We're going to spend $1.5 million on radios.
right. So the long-term capital project we put together to totally revamp all public safety radios, both the infrastructure, the software, and the actual units, was like yeah, I guess that's the, phase one is the $1.4 million, right? And, you know, as a stopgap, at the very least, we need to replace the actual hardware, right? The portable radios, the mobile radios, to move to the all-band or tri-band radios. That's the current technology. So, you know, we can do it a little at a time. 60 is great. It buys you a few radios. I can tell you, because we just we just ordered 2 last week. The current version of the portable radios that we use, with the software you need installed, are $9,500 each. So this is going to get you, you know, like 5 or 6 radios. So meaningless in the scheme of things. So to do this right and have every public safety person and every vehicle have the current state-of-the-art radios, plus infrastructure upgrades so the signal reaches where it's supposed to go, plus, you know, the encryption and the security on, you know, all that stuff, that's the, you know, the 2026 big number. So at the very least, we'd like to, you know, on an annual basis, because who knows what's going to happen, you know, with the, you know, with the 2026 budget. So at the very least, you know, we'd like to start replacing a few, you know, 5 or 6 every year, so at least we can upgrade what we have. It's not perfect without the rest of the infrastructure upgrades, but at least we have actual radios that can communicate, for example, on the county frequencies. We can speak to the county, and we can speak with outside agencies that also have those radios. So they come to town for, you know, I don't know, God forbid an active shooter again, call at the high school, and we have 5 surrounding police departments that show up. We don't have a situation like we did, I want to say last spring, where officers from, you know, Wyckoff and some other surrounding towns showed up, but were standing around with their hands in their pockets because they had no way of communicating with Central Dispatch or with our, you know, commanders on the scene.
And through you, Mayor, to the Councilwoman's question, I think it was our general philosophy when we had our capital budget meeting with our department heads, was to move towards doing these purchases of the handheld radios, the portable radios, so that these were actually on the first responders, part of their gear. We are going to have a greater conversation next year about some of the infrastructure that supports the radio system. And we are already meeting about that to put a multi-year plan together, because obviously the costs of upgrading a system like that are significant. So, but that's something that we will have conversations about as we move through 24 and we get ready for 2025 and 2026 capital requests.
Good. Any questions, anyone? Jeremy, thank you so much. And thanks for the great work you do. We really appreciate it.
Okay. Mayor, if Director Calby is there, his discretion as to whether solid waste and recycling will present first or Ridgewood Water.
Nope.
No?
There you go.
There. Okay, I'm going to try. First time wearing a mask in a long time. So we're going to start with a sanitation and then pivot to recycling. Sean's going to, do a high-level overview for you. The biggest changes through both budgets this year are disposal costs for solid waste, and we'll detail those, and of course equipment, as you all know, the truck situation. But we are in somewhat better shape given the rentals that you have provided the fleet to utilize at this moment. So I'll turn it over to Sean. We'll start with sanitation.
Thank you, Rich. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Welcome, Sean.
Thank you for having me. So I'll start off actually by, we did get the first piece of good news that we've gotten since we got the rental trucks. We do have the truck that we ordered in last year's budget for recycling will be arriving tomorrow. And give or take 2 weeks or so, it should be on the road servicing the commingled pickup. So that's a huge help.
Excellent news.
That's the recycling?
Yes. where we are right now, we all know, I presented it a couple of weeks ago to you guys, the disposal budget went up significantly by almost $13 for sanitation. That's going to be the biggest hit that we do have. We do have one employee in sanitation that's retiring this year. That's going to turn a bigger salary into a $78,000 salary, $79,000 into a $53,000 salary, which is going to help out a lot. We also have at least one, possibly two employees moving over to the fire department. So that's going to hurt for a minute until we find their replacements. I spent a lot of time training those guys, but I'm happy for them. If well, at least the one. If I'm not sure, I think we find out later about the second. But that's also going to shave a little bit off of the operating budget. Other than that, we are in good shape right now with the rentals. Hoping that we stay that way. We still have 3 trucks that are down, 2 sanitation trucks and 1 recycling truck. So we're still not anywhere near full capacity there. So the rentals are definitely needed still. My goal is to hopefully be able to extend the rentals to help out with the yard waste pickup. I know Keith has asked us to reach out to other towns to find out if we can work out something with their with the trucks that they're currently not using. Waiting to hear back on that. For recycling, we have 1 employee that's going to be retiring, a senior employee that's making that's an $85,000 salary. We are going to miss him. We have another one that we're still waiting. He's our most senior guy. He's been working for us for 33 years, but every year he says he's going to retire, and he doesn't pull the switch. So, but he's currently injured right now, and I think that's going to help him make his decision. That's what my hope is for him, because he's put in a lot of years here. And also, I'm so grateful that you guys did the ordinance to buy the recycling truck for next year. That's going to give us another dual steer. We'll hopefully see that in the early part of next year. That's going to help out our collections immensely. On any questions so far about the
Do you have enough,
operating budget?
Go ahead.
do you have enough drivers?
We do have enough drivers right now. We have a couple that are in the process of acquiring their CDLs. Moving forward, I am looking for the guys that are going to be leaving us. I'm hoping to get CDL drivers applying for those positions and not have to train them, because we could use a little bit of experience right now.
I just wanted to say, Sean,
Yes.
I wanted to thank you on behalf of the council that you thanked us for setting aside the money to get the trucks. I want to thank you for getting everything done with not nearly enough equipment when things were getting tough with trucks breaking down. And it was something that I know you and your people worked exceptionally hard to make it so that nobody on the other end even knew that you were down all that equipment. So really, thank you so much.
Thank you, and all the credit goes to the guys that did the work. There was a lot of stress for me. Fortunately, I don't have any here to pull out. But they really, I give all the credit to them. They worked their butts off.
We're going to thank you anyway.
I just want to echo the thank you, that's not entirely true. It goes to them, because as a new council member, on my list from my notes was we owed you 2 garbage trucks. We knew it was not sustainable. And, when we all talk about last year's gaps in the budget, and I do think it has to do with you and the way you ran the department. And I was very excited to see the bond come in and for us to move that out. And I just hope you get the staff that you need. If you need any help with that, obviously, I know you're looking for experience, but sometimes we could partner with the schools. I'm assuming nobody at the high school has a commercial license, but, or Bergen County. If you need any help, let us know. I'd just hate to see you short-staffed. and-
Experience is preferred, but able bodies will do. Thank you. To close up on recycling, I think we're in a good place. Our ACR, Atlantic Coast Recycling, is looking at being done and open for business in April, which is going to save us a lot of money in overtime and wear and tear on trucks. The trek to Newark has been treacherous on our fleet. And I'm really looking forward to going back to Passaic again. That's a huge step for 2024. On the capital budget side, I'll start with recycling.
Sean, before we
Yes.
go there, under materials and supplies, you have
Oh,
recycling barrels for 15,000 and a little bit. Are those for the guys who are on the truck, or are those around town, those recycling barrels?
Those actually are for, I think that was for the replacement of recycling barrels for the residents.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And Sean, before you go to capital, were you done, Pam?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, on the sanitation full-time salaries, I noticed a bit of a bump from about 1.4 to 1.6 million. Can you walk us through that?
From 1.4 to 1.6. Is that just the?
So we have one new employee in that department, Vic Amoruso, who came over from
Oh,
building
yes,
maintenance.
That's right.
Right?
I forgot about poor Vic.
And
Yes.
then we have two laborers that we're anticipating hiring for the year. And that might go up depending on what we do with the transfer over to the fire department.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Kick safe.
Mayor, before we move to capital,
Yep.
I just want Sean to explain to the council, and also for the public's edification. Sean, can you just run us through what we're trying to accomplish in this budget by extending the lease agreements that we had previously approved earlier this year at a council meeting?
Yep, that was where I
How
was going
that's
next.
and how that's going to outfit your divisions moving forward?
Yep. So right now, even though we have the rentals, so we're in a good spot right now. But if we give back the rentals at the end of the 3 months, we're always going to have trucks that are down. Even if the capital goes through this year, and there are 3 trucks on the capital budget this year, even if we order those trucks, we don't see them until next year. So we won't be in a position to utilize those trucks for the yard waste pickup. So the idea was to see if we could find a way to fit into the operating budget to keep the rentals for a full 13 months. And what that would do is that would take $900 off of each truck for the per month for the year. And then it'll give us the ability, instead of buying 3 trucks this year, buy 2, and then next year make the 2 trucks that we buy the rentals that we have. And the idea is that we have the trucks on the ground. If we order 3 this year, we possibly don't see them until next summer. And then the truck that we would order next year, we don't see until 2026, 2027. And the price is going to go up. The price for the trucks have been going up steadily, about 15% a year since 2020. So if you look at the capital budget and you see the projected, budget for the next 5 years, the jump in price that we're projecting it to be if we can get the trucks that we have now at a price that they quote us now. Yeah, and plus we can use, at the end of the 13 months, we can use 25% of the money that we used on the rentals towards the purchase of the price of the truck next year. Plus we get brand new trucks. When you sign up for the 13 months rental program, what they'll do is they'll send somebody out with 2 new trucks that haven't been rented, and take back the ones that they rented us.
Right.
Great.
So just again.
Before we go on, I just want to
sorry.
note for the record that Councilmember Evan Whites has arrived. So go ahead, Keith.
So Mayor, while this is somewhat uncustomary, the supply and demand chain is what has warranted us to try to fit these extended rentals into the operating budget for 2024. As Sean said, we're still going to need to buy trucks through capital, but with such long lead times on delivering these vehicles, we feel that converting the rental into an ultimate purchase would be the right strategy so that we do have these vehicles on the ground and are able to be used by sanitation.
Any questions, anyone? Good. Sean, I do want to note that we have talked about getting more electric vehicles in our fleet, and I noticed that in your capital request is a Ford F-150 electric pickup truck.
Yes, I've
And
been
the charging
trying to
station.
do that for years, and now it's more important because last year we promoted Moses Barahona to assistant supervisor. So currently he has no truck. So most days, if I'm doing office work, we share. I share my truck and he takes it. But then there are some days when he needs it and I don't have it. So I'm out putting tags on people's garbage cans and recycling cans in my personal vehicle, and that's going to lead to a problem one day.
Listen, I'm just happy that, look, we got a long way to go on electric
And
vehicles, but we're
we do have
getting
a
started.
plan in place right now. I spoke with Signal and in the parking garage for right now because we don't have the infrastructure at any of our sites for an electric vehicle for parking. They did when they installed the charging stations in the parking garage. They left the accessibility to add onto the 3rd level more chargers, so they can put a charger there, and they can put a lock on it, so that can be my parking spot for where I park my car and charge it overnight.
So that's a slow charge?
You're-
No, it would be a level 2 charger.
Because it's a truck, it'd have to be higher.
Yeah.
Was it? Sorry.
I'm wondering why everyone's so calm about this. I wonder who's going to get to introduce the bond and second it. I think you're going to have a fight from Pam, Paul. I mean, it's super exciting. We've talked a lot about the electric vehicles. I've talked a lot about the Lightning. I think it's great. I think it's probably one of the most innovative thing we've seen in Capitol. It's just very exciting. And
Thank you.
I'm surprised Pam's not saying
And
more.
just on a
It's so
side note,
exciting.
Jovan, he's like the champion of the Ford Lightning Group, and he sent me an email last week where I guess one of the Ford dealers in New Jersey had a town order 6 of them, and they reneged on the purchase, so they're available.
That is one question I have. Does Ford have a charging station at the place where they sell them the way Tesla does?
I'm sure they do.
Okay.
Good. Any other questions? Sean, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, did we go over
Yeah.
everything for capital?
Yeah, we can go over the capital.
Oh, forgive
It's
me.
going to be pretty simple. We've already crossed one bridge with the bond ordinance. The other one, we're looking for a 29-yard dual steer Kenworth for recycling. That's just going to give us a truck another dual steer truck, so we don't have to steal employees from sanitation to make routes when we don't have an operational dual steer. And then for sanitation, we're looking at getting another Kenworth a single steer, just to get us back up and start. We have 2 older Kenworths that are, when I say that, this is going to sound crazy, but in 2018 or 2017, they purchased these 2 new Kenworth trucks, and they're great, but they decided to put bodies that were from the 1990s on them, and we're having all kinds of problems with them now. They did it to save money. I get it. Back then they were, but this is why you don't put old technology on new vehicles. Those 2 of those trucks are the ones that are down right now waiting for parts.
Wow.
Got it.
Did they know at the time when they purchased them that it was unsold?
Yeah, it saved them money on having to buy another body. They were surplusing the old trucks, so they took the old trucks and took the bodies off of them, and all they had to do was pay the rebuild fee. They didn't have to pay the price for the bodies of the trucks. But no, I don't think that they anticipated that the bodies were going to change so dramatically over the next few years, and now that body style is so old that they just sit around waiting for the parts when they break down, even though the trucks are brand new.
Wow, that's bad.
Anything else? Well, good. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Rich?
Mayor, we'll move on to Ridgewood Water. I believe Mike Kors and Rich Calby are going to make the presentation.
Thank you, Keith. We're going to do a little bit different this year. Michael Kors is going to lead the presentation. Myself and staff is here to answer any questions that you have on any of the items. This budget that you have in front of you, and that's going to be presented, has been reviewed by an outside rate expert, Raf Tellis. Their firm experienced in rate making. They reviewed the entire budget and found that, in their opinion, it's reasonable and appropriate. There's a 4 to 6 page memo that they've published. We'll make this available. It'll also be on the Ridgewood Water website, along with a copy of this presentation by the end of this week. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Kors to lead the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Calby.
I'm sorry, and this is the water utility tab? Oh, it's the pretty one, sorry.
Yeah, right in the front corner here.
Gotcha.
I'll start off a little bit by talking about our structure. You know, when we designed this presentation, it's for presenting the budget as well as presenting the budget not just for the council but for our ratepayers and to be posted out to the public. So there's some more detail than what I'll cover just in here for the sake of the year-long evaluation of this. Before I start, I would like to take a moment to first of all recognize you, our governing body, not just for your actions and oversight in our all of our processes, or for representing the residents of Ridgewood, but also in the unwavering support I've felt from you. And this is the end of my first year here, and I've seen a lot of strengths within this village, but the support that I've seen for the water department, especially with all of the challenges we are facing, has been probably one of the brightest spots of my job. So I'll start off by thanking you. On a sadder note, we would like to make a little dedication with this year's budget. We've lost a very valuable member of the water industry as well as the Ridgewood Water financial team. So we'd like to dedicate the 2024 budget in the loving memory of Howard J. Woods. Howard Woods has been a very active member in our budget process and in our financial reviews for the past almost a decade now. And his experience has really grown into creating a more sustainable and a more transparent budget as we move forward. And his impact will be felt for years to come. So for his undying dedication to the water industry and the love of his analysis for effective rates, we wanted to dedicate this to Howard Woods. I have many reasons to be grateful this year. One of the, not only just for you guys, but as I look and reflect upon the team I've been able to become a part of. So on the screen, you see our management team. Of course, coming in, I was able to see the stable leadership of Heather, our former manager, but I've also been excited to see the strong vision and the forward-moving atmosphere brought by Keith. I'm able to operate under the strong direction and leadership of our director, Rich Calby, and I feel great camaraderie amongst the team on my management level, where we have our senior engineer, Joe Fasano, our superintendent of water, William Birwaz, and I feel like I'm stepping into great shoes with the many different business managers that have come before me. So it's been an easy job to take on. No, maybe not easy.
Maybe that was just a slight exaggeration. Easy.
Slight one.
Yeah, sorry.
And who is your other colleague here?
Yes.
Welcome.
Alex is a very strong member of our team who came to us first as an intern and has grown through our GIS department and has become a valued member, bringing a level of experience in an astronautical engineer, aeronautical.
Ridgewood High School graduate.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. And 1980 something or other.
All right, we're just old. Let's leave it at that. Yeah.
And just as importantly, in many cases more so, I'd want to recognize the strong operations staff that we have. First leading with our great supervisory team, where we have 4 divisions under our chief water treatment plant operator, James Tecchio, our GIS specialist, Neil Gallone, our senior management assistant, Justin Popek, and our supervisor of our distribution team, Brian Tenhoff. We also have our assistant supervisor, Daniel Labita, who has stepped up and done an amazing job assisting that team. I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize our newest engineer, Yolanda McCullum, Lonnie, and for her undying energy and support she's done to many of our programs. One of the themes of this year is the amount of money that has already been borrowed, but now the projects that need to be executed because of that. And having the engineering team we have in place goes a long way to enabling us to do that. Along with that, we have 37 skilled programmers, laborers, operators, repairers, technicians, inspectors, and administrative representatives that all come together to make the pieces become a full puzzle. So. Now, I was impressed when I came to Ridgewood, just in general, from the challenges we have and the steps that have already been taken, but seeing the depth of the team has really left an impression upon me. We have a saying in the water world: an optimal parameter does not lend to an optimal process. And while each of these individuals are optimal in their own way, it's how the division supervisors work together that really pull the pieces together. And with that, it's not just within the Ridgewood Water team that we see that type of camaraderie. I want to take some time to give special thanks to our colleagues throughout the village of Ridgewood. Again, in the water industry, you start to find, and you view your system a little bit as a baby of sorts. And we all know it takes a village to raise a child. So thank you to our fellow department heads and their dedicated staff for the support that they provide to us in various different things throughout the year. Talking about where this budget goes and what kind of activities it supports, I want to do a quick review of the different steps that we've taken, particularly focusing on 2 of the biggest regulatory requirements that have come about since the Safe Drinking Water Act. It's a very exciting year because after all of the planning and all of the work and all of the budgeting and figuring out where the balances can come from, we're finally at the stage where we need to move forward and execute. And I'm happy to say we're at this state where just about all of our treatment facilities are at that state of entering that execution. CAR and Twinney have been running for years now. We have our interconnects. We have 2 very strong interconnections live and offering us the support of NJDEP, PFAS, meeting the NJDEP standards and giving us another source as we affect our operational strategy. We have taken the next step with the CAR treatment facility as we are now rerouting and starting to move some of the satellite wells through that facility. Ravine has had its groundbreaking last year, and we're expecting to come online this year, and Prospect has already entered the first stages of construction. So we finally have 4 of our 12 facilities under construction. With that, the rest of the 8 are in different stages of their bidding, construction projects, and final design. But we are at those final steps for all of our 12 treatment plants, and that's probably one of the biggest things to see going into this next year, is that all of these plans, the hard work going in these last 3 to 4 years, have really come together and are going to start coming in, and the pieces are going to start falling into place. And if PFAS wasn't enough, the next thing we want to focus in on, and we have been making great strides in, is in our lead service line replacement program. Talk about the 2 regulatory affairs, the first one being our PFAS treatment requirements, and the second being the mandate to replace our lead service lines. It's very exciting to know that we have about 95% of our system identified and have already replaced about 326 main to curb since we've started replacing these. From where I came from beforehand and saw many of the systems, you would find most of them at this point, say probably 75% are at almost 100% unknowns, where by the end of this year, we're expected to have all of our identification completed and be moving on to all of our replacement plans. With that, we've also contracted a consulting firm, CDM Smith, to come in and help with the final design of that customer side replacement plan and moving forward so we can meet our goals to have all of these lead service lines out of the system by the end of 2031. And if those goals weren't enough, in addition, we have a few more targets where, I like to say we have our 2 biggest regulatory, but the other biggest challenge we have is the aging infrastructure. And the system as historic as this and as advanced as it was for its time will come with that aging infrastructure. And every year we have a certain amount of main replacement that we are bringing into the fold. So we'll see in our capital budget that that's where part of our big focus, beyond our PFAS and our lead service line. We have our main replacements coming in. We're working on expanding our lab and expect to have our lab certified for GCMS by the end of the year. We're also increasing some of our water conservation and campaign and outreach efforts in order to support that PFAS operational strategy even further as we wait for these treatment plants to come online. What I am excited to also announce is that we've reached one of our first goals this year of launching an emergency routine construction map on our construction activities page. This is similar to an outage map. If you go to our website, an outage map you might find on like a PSE&G website where they kind of indicate where power outages are. We're going to be trying to showcase all of our construction activities. So if somebody sees there's work going on in their streets, or if they're out of service for a day, they have a place to go and see and get a description of where that actual work is taking place.
Mike, what does GCMS mean?
Gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. Did I get that right, Bill?
Aren't you glad you asked?
I'd have to go back to my chemistry classes to tell you what the full process is, but the GCMS is designed to build our capacity in analyzing VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and being able to bring that all in-house. So as we look at what the budget is going to support, let's talk about what those actual figures are. So for our 2024 budget highlights, Rich had already mentioned that we have been lucky enough to commission Raftellus Financial Consultants, not only to review and verify our budget using Howard Wood's model, but also then adding in their own perspective. So it has a nice viewpoint of almost having 2 perspectives, Howard's view and what he set up for us, as well as this new consulting firm coming in, being able to give their perspectives and expand upon what we already have. With that, they will review it for 3 specific areas, which we'll kind of focus on throughout the project: our revenue requirement, our expense calculations, and then discuss what our rate projections will provide to give us the revenue we need to meet all of those expenses. Raftellus completed that review earlier this year, and as Rich mentioned, we will have a copy of that memo available on the website for the public to view. Overall, it all comes down to a budget increase of about 13% over last year. Now, when I say 13%, I want to emphasize that only 2% of that is actually coming from operational increases. The rest of that is coming from amounts that we have put into, well, the increase we have in our debt service. We've been borrowing, and now we have to start paying back. And in addition, we've been taking a special effort to move some of our capital expenses that we may have, taken out new debt for in the past into our PAYGO account. And we are utilizing a certain amount of our surplus in order to stabilize our rates and make sure that we aren't taking on unnecessary new debt, as we have already enough of the debt that we are taking on.
So I just want to be clear, operationally, you're only up 2%. The other 11% is to modernize our facility and to establish treatment facilities so that our water is cleaner and better.
Yes.
Great.
How are you paying? Sorry, go on.
Well, approximately how much of surplus are you attributing to the debt?
This year's total anticipated surplus is 3.8 million in round numbers.
And you're going to put 100% of that to the debt?
No, the portion that's going towards the debt, we put in 1.1 million to avoid future debt. The other balance is going to avoid rate increases, to stabilize the rate.
And that accrues like the surplus, how much will you project the surplus of next year, roughly?
In terms of the balance?
Yeah.
The balance is projected to be north of $10 million still, even after the use of this full surplus in 2024.
Okay.
So walk me through that, because I'm interested how you're going to pay for the 13%. So talk to me about that.
About how we're paying for the 13%?
That might be the answer.
Yeah, no, there's
I want to hear, right.
There's a future slide with the rate increases.
Okay.
That are the resulting net of the increase.
But I guess before we get there, though, so talk to me, I didn't quite follow Siobhan's question about the surplus. So we are predicting that we will have $3.8 million left over at the end of this coming year?
No.
Okay.
No. The 1.1 million is how much we took out of what would have been capital that we would have borrowed for and inserted into the operating budget because we had the surplus money available to utilize. So we're avoiding having to borrow for those 4 projects that are bulleted at the bottom of the slide.
So you're using surplus funds to offset the 13% then?
Correct.
Okay.
Offset debt.
Eagerly await the slide and paying for the 13%, but that sounds good.
And there's remaining 2 and change left this year. That's what you said. There's 3.3 and you took 1.1?
No, there'll be over $10 million in surplus balance still available.
Okay.
In the water budget. Yes.
I love surplus. That's great.
So breaking down the expense requirements, we took this slide to separate it into our regular operations budget as well as the allocations we see being attributed to the increased cost from PFAS. Overall, the numbers at the bottom are the ones I wanted you to focus in on. When we're breaking down the number of expenses, we try to categorize them in a number of different ways. We found these 6 categories to break it into, but overall, the budget we're asking and we're proposing is going to be $22,678,281. It's an operations budget of around $18,327,000, and the PFAS allocation around $4.3 million. Looking further, we have a different representation.
Could I ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
So how do we know, because the bonds are across the time, what the rate is, Bob? I mean, I'm assuming there's multiple bonds on this, yes?
Yes, it's very true.
Okay. And do we ever, think about consolidating them all under one rate? Are we allowed to do that?
So no, you're not.
Okay.
Only if you were to defease the bonds, and usually that comes at higher interest rates for a lower interest rate. So every year we have a financial advisor that walks us through what the options are.
Yep.
So we don't have that opportunity right now.
And just because people ask about this, how many bonds is it? Is it 10? Is it 15?
Issues or
Yeah.
total bonds?
Total bonds.
Outstanding bonds.
For the water department?
Yeah, that I don't have in front of me.
Okay.
I will get it for you, though.
You don't have to. I was just, it's like sort of people will ask, how much money across how many bonds? How long have we been paying the
Sure.
interest?
While you're talking to them, I'll see if I can pull it
Okay,
up.
thanks.
On this graph, we've broken out the different categories for those budget. I wanted to focus in on the big three. Our salaries and wages are about 22% of that 22 million figure. Our operations are about 24%, and then our debt is about 20%. What I wanted to showcase a little bit with this slide is where we are going, where we have been, and where we're going with our water capital budgeting. You know, obviously, we've had quite a year last year where we had about $79 million hit us in 2023. What I liked when I saw this graph is we took some time to do a 5-year budget projection as well as look as where we are. And, you know, as we saw ourselves increasing leading into that 2022 and then had the big borrowing as we tried to enact this PFAS master plan, we're back on track into where that more normalized range is of seeing about 16 million, 14 million, 14 million, 13 million, 12 million as we're moving forward. When we break out 2024, what we're really looking at is about 4 million for our current capital outside of PFAS. The 16 million also includes 12.5 million in order to cover the execution of the last 3 PFAS treatment plants, which is the Maine, Mountain, and East side. So everything else has been through the final design and has entered into either the final permitting approval phase, and then these are the last 3 that we have to borrow for this year. Moving forward, some of those amounts that we see are because we're entering into the lead service line replacement program. And as we know with that, we will have certain recovery as we collect that over the next 30 years from the residents and through that program. Now, expense requirements can be quite alarming, but that's only if we're not looking at what our revenue stream is. And I'm happy to say our revenue stream is fairly strong. You know, while we are doing that 3.8 surplus added into that revenue in order to stabilize those rates this year, our water rents have been up last year, and we're collecting about 16 million in water rents. We have hazardous service fees, which is a nominal amount, but about 182,000. And through various miscellaneous revenues, we have another $1.2 million. That includes an increase of new cell tower rents, as we've had a great project come unfold this year with a new cell tower rent for the financial industry, bringing in almost an additional $500,000. Our water rates, our proposed rate increases should bring in an additional $173,000, and our PFAS surcharges will bring in an additional $500,000. So long and short, with those figures, that is where we get our budget. That's how we meet our budget. And this was the slide that we had talked about to explain a little bit of how we're going to meet that 13% increase.
So how does it affect people's water bills?
Yep.
I keep being ahead of you guys.
I know,
I'm
you're
sorry.
jumping on me. Next year, I'm going to have to reorganize these slides.
I guess so.
Always looking ahead, Evan.
Yes.
There it is.
Very nice.
So before we get into how that affects folks' water bills, let's talk about where we are for how those water bills are broken down. We have 3 types of charges that we have within our water rents. We have our PFAS surcharge, we have our volumetric rates, and we have our fixed service charge. We're now looking to have any changes to our fixed rate. Right now, we are proposing an increase to our PFAS rate that's along the schedule we've talked about in the past. And that increase will allow us to bring us to a total collection of about $1.8 million in order to start paying back into our PFAS funds that we've been borrowing into. Our volumetric rate, we're proposing our standard 3% increase. To break down what those revenues actually look like as far as each of the categories, you know, our 2 biggest ones are coming from our water rents, as is always our main source of revenue, and then we have about a quarter of that chunk, maybe a third of that chunk, less than about a fifth of that chunk from our surplus. Then we see that 7% is coming in at that miscellaneous revenue and 1% from our hydrant rents. Looking at the big part of that puzzle there, the water rents, We can break that down into our three types of charges. So the vast majority of our income is coming from our volumetric rate. Then our fixed rate brings in about 19%, so the volumetric rates will bring in about 70% of our revenue. Our fixed rates bring in about 19% of our revenue, and then our PFAS surcharge for this year will bring about 11% of our revenue. These are the new proposed rates that we will be asking you guys to evaluate and make a decision on. The PFAS treatment charges, so we're looking at about, for our standard and most used meter size, the 5/8 meter, about a $24 charge per quarter. These increases will help us generate that $1.8, $1.9 million we're looking to recover for our PFAS payments. For the volumetric rates, we'll be looking to go up to about 5.86. And as you asked what that means as far as water bills, first on a comparison, not from where we were in 2023 to 2024, this is what the average water bill will look like for the entire year for a typical customer using about 7,000 gallons per month. So in 2023, it was $645. In 2024, we'll be looking at about $695. Now, if I did a search to find out what New Jersey's state average water bill is, the annual for the state is $864. So at this point, we're well under what the average is.
Nice.
Further comparison, this graph is a selection of different water utilities of either similar stature or different dynamic throughout the state. And the two highlighted sections are what we were in 2023 and where we'll be in 2024. What's very important to note here, though, because it looks like we jumped over 3 water systems when we proposed our rates, is that the rates we're calculating for the rest of the bars are based on January 2024. So that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what they will be proposing for their rate increases. But as far as where they currently are and where we currently are is where that first bar is at 645, somewhere towards the front half. And then depending on where they go, but according to the rates that we have on their websites to go off of, we'll be jumping up to that next state. Either way, still quite in the middle of the rack as opposed to weighted to one side or the other.
So your average resident sees an extra $50 a year?
Yes.
Go up. Okay.
So sidebar question, just because it's a very good visual coming out of the budget. Maybe we could send this to Keith and have a discussion about posting some of this? Because, I mean, I think it's clearly an increase to the homeowner, but it's below the state threshold, which is good. And with the increase, we get the added benefit of improved infrastructure. And I think this information is very palatable and would be very interesting. And part of our job is to engage people in the process. So these 2 slides are awesome, awesome, and they're great. And I think they're very good way to get more public engagement on what the budgeting process is.
And I
So
have
through you,
to...
Mayor, I believe that the intention is to post this whole presentation up on the Ridgewood Water website. We can also help to work with Carol to spread this even further than that. But we can highlight as far as pushing out those 2 specific slides that the council member mentioned.
I mean, if you agree, Keith, I don't want to overstep, but I do think.
Yeah, no, I
okay.
think it's important. I think there's going to be a full explanation as we get towards the introduction of the municipal budget, and certainly these data points from the water department are important to be shared.
Right, and you need to add your lovely Ridgewood Water logo, because I'm going to go for broke, because the 4 water drops indicate the 4 areas of service. I always, long time ago, Rich Calby told me
Yes.
that.
Yeah. And you are also ahead of the game, because the next slide is going to tell you about the next steps in the process and how the public could get more involved and see where we're going with the rates.
And before we do that, I want to just emphasize the point that Siobhan brought out. The fact that our water rates are below the state average while we are in the middle of a $150 million infrastructure filtration project that is going to make Ridgewood Water among the cleanest water in the state, in the country, to bring PFAS to non-detectable levels. That is really amazing. Like absolutely amazing, and you should all, every one of you should be commended for that. And we appreciate it both as a council, but as residents, because that's just, I'm not sure how you did that, but I'm really happy you did.
So, first of all, by the way, this Ridgewood water I'm drinking from tonight, so I'm on board, guys. I'm assuming the PFAS charges go away in 2026? When do they go away?
They will continue as long as there is debt to pay for those improvements or until such time there's recovery or other methods to offset them, such as grants, maybe insurance.
Assuming no grants or recovery, then I mean, are we talking, how long are we talking? Decades?
I can't give you a full projection on the end date, but one of the things we did with Howard Woods last year was a 10-year projection. We plan to come to you at a later time to present the 10-year plan. It is a worst-case scenario, and the PFAS surcharge is expected to top off, again, with no recovery, at $129 and change by 2028. That's per quarter. So it does go up substantially in the future.
So, I mean, that's my concern, right? Like, so it's $50, I get it, and huge inflation going on right now. This is about a 7 to 8% increase is what you're proposing, which is not an insignificant percentage. And if you do that year over year over year over year, that's going to be a problem. And I appreciate that we're under the state average, and that's fantastic. But for your average Ridgewood resident, especially a senior citizen, they just know what they've been paying.
Sure.
So what assurances can you give this council that next year we're not going to see another 7.5%?
None, because it's actually could be more. By 2026, all the iBank loans become reality. Right now, we're paying nothing on them. It's short-term financing issued by the iBank. It all gets rolled up once the project is complete. 2026 is when the first loan will start payments, and then they'll build from there as each project completes. So we're really going to hit the pinnacle point of debt probably in 26 through 29 or so. That's part of that 10-year plan. So this year, in a ways, though, even though it's 7 to 8%, it's a breather in terms of where we may be going. That's why it's important that every year we pay attention to the other parts of how we're doing the operation to be efficient. That's why we've cut back on general debt. We set for ourselves a goal of no more than $5 million for regular general fund debt outside of PFAS and lead service lines. This year, we've brought down to 4 by moving $1 million of that into the operating budget just for this year. We're going to do things like that moving forward to try to help balance it. But again, once that debt comes due, on top of the other general fund debt that Bob has, fortunately been able to get good rates on and consolidate, we're looking at some future years that could be a lot worse.
So, I mean, we do need to have that discussion at some point, and we need to think about that. Again, I understand what you're doing here, and everything you just said, Rich, makes a ton of sense, and I appreciate you trying to limit capital to only PFAS, or as much as possible, which is great to try to head off what's coming. But this does concern me in the sense that, 7% is not great. Again, $50, I get it. PFAS, to Paul's point, it's fantastic. But this feels a little bit like a time bomb.
Sure.
Can I just add to that through you, Mayor, that there is a little bit more of a global strategy to this as far as funding, especially the PFAS treatment centers. We've pursued multiple grant opportunities through the federal government and with the help of Congressman Gottheimer when we did the groundbreaking on Goffel Road. I think that was offset by $2 million, Rich, worth of federal funding.
2.8 million.
2.8 million. We have a meeting the first or second week of March with all of the legislative delegations, Councilman, that represent the Ridgewood Water Service area, because we do need to have some discussions with the state about offsetting some of these costs. Obviously, the PFAS treatment centers are a mandate coming from the EPA and the DEP, and we're looking for the state to partner with us to sort of offset those costs. And then, of course, there's the pending litigation, which we're actually going to speak about tonight in closed session, which will have some impact on this discussion point as well.
All right,
Two-
so-
I just also want to say, because I understand the finance and that it's linear, but in addition to the mandates, we do have a public call to action. I mean, I think you guys do a great job, but there is the clamoring sense of our brand needs to be improved, our water brand. And, you know, this is what happens if we improve the infrastructure, we pay for it, and we pay for it over the course of the time through the bonds. And to improve the technology, we need to do the spend. To do the spend, we need to bond, and the interest becomes a burden. But, you know, the Ridgewood water topic, and again, I'm sure you guys have all heard it, is a topic within our community from our taxpayers. There's been many people who feel unsafe drinking the water. You know, when people who, I mean, I'm not having a baby, but when I was, it was a big discussion. So I feel there's been a public rally cry in a lot of ways, along a lot of lines, to improve it. And I too would like the bonds to be smaller. That's why I want to talk about some of the interests. But we have invested, and it is going to be more expensive because we've improved the quality of the water. And in addition to the mandates, at least I do, you know, the mandates Keith gets, and we hear it that way. But the public has demanded we improve this water. I mean, a lot. I can't be alone, the only council person who's repeatedly heard the questions and the approval. And, you know, tonight, the lead, I mean, lead is a long-standing issue. It's like kind of crazy to me, again, going back to the babies. I mean, I had Liam in New York City, and we had to do the mandated lead test. That's 20 years ago. So I think it's great. I mean, I agree with Evan, it needs to be low, but I don't want the response to public input, the improvement to our infrastructure. Infrastructure is really expensive, and I think you guys are moving in the right direction, and we want to make sure it doesn't blow off. But I mean, it is going to be more expensive. There's no way around it.
So I don't think anyone disagrees that we need to fix lead, we need to fix PFAS. Again, I'm literally drinking Ridgewood water tonight, so I'm completely on board with that. My problem is just figuring out how to pay for it. That's the issue. We need this, but what I don't want to have is for a future council, or one of us, if we're so lucky to be here for another 4 to 8 years, is to have to explain why Ridgewood water rates are doubling. That's not fair to seniors, it's not fair to folks on fixed
Agreed.
incomes, it's not fair to the rest of us. So I don't think there's going to be a lot we're going to do about this tonight. Again, I think you guys have done a very judicious job for the short term, and appreciate, you know, $50, $50, 7%, which I'm not thrilled with, but it's $50. And to Paul's credit, there's a lot of Paul's point, there's a lot of work going on. Keith, I appreciate we'll have some closed session comments on litigation. I definitely want to hear that. I want to ensure that we don't lose sight on this issue. We need to figure out a way to take, to take the time bomb away a little bit, and try to figure out ways for that debt to not hit us all in the face another 3 or 4 years of 2026 when that comes due. Because if we do 7% every year over and over again, that's not going to be acceptable. It's just not. And from it sounds like we don't know what it's going to be in 2026. It could be greater. And that's what really concerns me about. We have to be good stewards of the future of the village and ensure that we're not sticking the next council with some huge bill, because that's not fair.
And that's totally understood. And, you know, to Rich and his team's credit, they've always projected the worst case scenario, yet at the same time are equally putting effort towards finding, ways to offset what this is going to cost the customer base in the 4 towns, as we meet the mandate. So obviously, our partners at the federal and state level are going to be crucial to trying to help lift this burden. And we're committed to doing that. And like I said, we're meeting with the legislative delegations at the beginning of March.
I agree with Keith. We are uniquely burdened with PFAS. Every town in New Jersey does not have this problem, and the state and the federal government, we should be impressing upon them that something like a Superfund approach may be appropriate.
And we will be, which is, as Keith said, that's why we've already got a meeting with our state legislative leaders to sit and discuss this. We're going to be meeting with federal leaders, federal legislators. We are, again, just tonight, we're going to be discussing our legal options, because we're in a lawsuit with the manufacturers of PFAS. We're looking at a lot of different options. Whether or not they come through remains to be seen. But the issue at the end of the day is, well, we can have less expensive water that isn't necessarily what we want to drink, or we can bring it up to the standards that we have to bring it up to, and then go to these different areas to try and find funding for it, which is exactly what we're doing. And Evan, your point is incredibly well taken, which is why we've already set up these meetings and we're discussing this litigation tonight.
And if it's of any relief, I mean, that's actually the entire purpose of the PFAS surcharge, to separate this from typical rate increases so that we can plan for that and find ways of recovering it without that being such a burden as on the typical rate. And to finish off, we just have a few next steps we're posting up on the website for those that need to see it. You know, we obviously have our budget presentation tonight. We'll plan to have this up on our public-facing side by the end of the week, as well as the memo from Aftelis. Next week on Wednesday at 7:30 will be our discussion where you guys can be discussing the rate proposal we just presented. On the 13th will be the introduction of the budget and the rate ordinance, and then that final reading coming in April 10th. So with that, that completes our presentation. You've also already asked some great questions, but if you have any more, we're happy to entertain them.
Anybody?
Mayor, not to prolong this or to throw out more accolades, but I just want to point out for everyone that one of the things that I've sort of marveled at during my time here has been that this water department is not only operating the day-to-day operations that they're charged to do, but they're also taking on, as you mentioned earlier, a project that's going to cost $150 million when it comes to the PFAS aspect of what they're doing to build these treatment facilities. So, you know, I don't think that should go unnoticed. You know, this water department is walking and chewing gum at the same time on some major projects, PFAS and lead just being, you know, two of the highest level examples. So I just want to thank Rich and his team over there at Ridgewood Water for what they're doing every day. We've developed a great working relationship over the last few months, and I just want to thank them for everything that they're doing for the community.
Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate all your great work.
Mayor, at this point, that wraps up the 3 budget presentations that we have for this evening. On Monday, we'll have another budget meeting where we will be reviewing some of the financial revenues. We'll finalize the capital budget with some luck. And Bob's going to talk about our year-end numbers. And then at that point, it's after Monday's meeting, it's going to be incumbent upon he and I and some of the other department directors to go back in and take another swipe at this budget to bring a proposed budget to the full council for consideration for introduction in March. So I don't know if Bob Rooney has anything else that he would like to add to that.
Good.
Can-
So with that,
Could I ask 2 questions? Can we write you questions about the trust reserve between then and now? Okay.
you guys are excused. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Oh, that's right, because you're going to be here for our closed session meeting.
Our colleagues could leave, though.
So Mayor, if I may, just to answer Councilmember Winograd's question, we'll be talking about capital budget, statutory expenditures, parking utility, trust fund levels, and staffing levels at the meeting on Monday. If any council members have any questions or are seeking any information between now and that time, please feel free to just send an email to myself and Bob, and we'll gather that information, hopefully get it to you beforehand. If not, be able to share it at the next budget hearing on Monday evening.
Great, thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Keith?
Nope.
No? Then with that, we will open up public comment. And seeing none, we will close public comment and entertain a resolution to go into closed session.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on February 21, 2024 at 6:30 PM or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session will be held in the Sidney B. Stoltz Courtroom of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session is limited to legal Ridgewood Water lawsuit, These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 at SEC, and be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Deputy Mayor Perrin?
Yes.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Yes.
Councilmember Whites?
Yes.
Councilmember Winograd?
She stepped out.
Okay, and Mayor Vagianos?
Yes. And with that,
And then
we
we
are...
need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Actually,
Go ahead.
Mayor, procedurally, I think you'll have to come back out to the council chambers to adjourn the meeting at the conclusion of the executive session.
I'm sorry, Keith, I didn't hear you.
I said, I think procedurally, you'll have to come back into the council chambers or into the courtroom to adjourn after the executive session.
If you say so. No,
Thank you.
sounds good. But for the moment, we are done. Thank you. Keith, what time